Hello, this is Jordan. This video is being recorded on the late evening of Sunday, December 11th, 2022. Thank you so much for joining me. In this video, I'm just going to provide a quick video on the gold and silver outlook for this coming week. And, starting off here, we have the metals. And interestingly, some clear divergences last week. We had gold was essentially flat on the week. Silver was up 2%. And if we look at GDX and GDXJ, which we'll get to, I believe those were down 3% and 4% on the week. So the sector a week ago or 2 weeks ago started to hit resistance, hit resistance, 200-day moving averages across the board. Silver has been doing better than the others, but aside from silver, we can say that, so far resistance is really holding in the miners. And for gold, it remains to be seen if it's going to be able this week to break through that confluence of resistance there. You can see the 200 and 400 day right there at about 1800, 1805. Yes, gold closed last week at 1811. But, looking at this chart, you can see it hasn't broken away from that. And, looking at just the price action and where price action over the last 2 years and where other resistance could come into play. I remember, roughly a year ago, the key level was around 1830, 1840. And I think if we're looking at a 50% retracement from the peak in August 2020 down to the recent low, I think that comes into play pretty close to 1840. So if gold is able to get one more push to the upside here, it's probably going to stop around 1840. When we're looking at silver, there's quite a bit of resistance at 24 and also up to 26. So that's an area where, especially here in the short term, I'd be really surprised if this move in silver is going to keep going. It closed at 23.72. Gold, so silver. Excuse me, silver was able to make a higher high. Gold, no, and the miners, no. So silver is on its own. In the big picture, that's positive, but I don't think that's a signal that the sector is going to continue to the upside here in the short term. I think silver is kind of more of an outlier in that sense. But we'll see. So silver has resistance at 24. I think there's also some at 24.50. So we'll see if silver can get another push to the upside here. We look at the 200-day. That's at 21.38. And looking at, where could support come into play if we do have a correction. For me, it's right around $20 and a little bit above that. And again, you have the 200-day at 21.38. So if we do get a pullback, that's what we'd really like to see here over the coming weeks. If silver is able to base in that, $20, 21 area, basis for a month, maybe even a couple months. And, from there, then it begins a real move higher that gets sustained. And so, again, going back to gold, there's a lot of resistance in this area. I think it's, maybe it has a push up here to 1830 or 1840, but I think over the next month or two, I think the balance, the probability here is you're probably going to see sideways to lower. And a big reason for that, it's really, more macro, and also because the stocks, the miners here, if we look at, we've noted in videos and in recent articles, you had these clear targets. You had confluence of resistance at GDX 30, GDXJ 37. And so if you look at the thumbnails there on the far right, the right edge of these charts, you can see 4 of the last 5 days, you basically have clear distribution candles. That's just another word for heavy selling. Only one day of accumulation in the last 5 trading days. 4 of those or distribution, both in GDX and GDXJ. So when you look at these candles, it's hard to say that the miners are not going to correct here and move lower in the short term. The other factor is, over the last couple months, this move in precious metals, it's followed the stock market. Now, granted, precious metals have outperformed the stock market. The miners have done better than the stock market. And I think that's even been the case in the last week or two as the market has started to pull back. But, nevertheless, when you consider what's happened over the last 2 months, you look at last week and seeing the miners fall. The stock market was down 3%, so the miners followed the stock market. They didn't follow silver and gold being flat. So you consider all these factors, and if we think that the stock market, and I'll have another video about this coming this week, if we think the stock market is going to turn lower and that the bear market is really going to reemerge here in the coming days and weeks ahead, you're going to see lower prices in the S&P. It's going to trade towards 3,500. I mean, if that's the case, I think it's going to break to a new low. It's going to go lower than that. And I think what I'm getting at is the beginning of that move. Like the first phase of that move, you're probably going to see miners get hit next to the stock market. And this is, these are thoughts for more of a macro video because I'm getting way into the future. This is only supposed to be an outlook for this week. But it's going to come, the divergence or the separation, that there has to be some kind of transition where precious metals trend higher as the S&P rolls over again. And maybe that comes when the S&P breaks below 3,500, and then the market knows, okay, the Fed's done. And if you're trading down to 3,300, the market's going to start sniffing rate cuts. That could be when you start to see the real divergence in precious metals, after they've corrected with the stock market, but not made a new low. That's when they emerge from a pretty good base, and you see a run. You see a run next year. That's a real bull market. That's what we've all been waiting for. So I know I got way beyond just the outlook for next week, but again, looking at next week and just looking at the price action, we're looking at these candles here on the right edge of the chart. That doesn't look to me looks to me like there's more downside risk. I mean, you have distribution there around significant resistance. And then if we go back and we look, silver could maybe trade up a little bit here. I mean, it's looking much stronger than everything, and that's a good sign. But, looking at gold hasn't made a higher high. Gold has a lot of resistance in the low 1800s. So when we look at these factors, I think the short-term outlook here, maybe not just for next week, but maybe for a couple weeks or the next month, the outlook could be sideways to down for the sector. But, as I just said, when I got, a little bit out into the future, we really have to pay attention, because if the macro, which slowly looks like it's setting up in our favor, gold is starting to show some outperformance. It's starting to show some relative strength. I mean, it's broken out against commodities. It's strong against oil. I mean, it's held up against the stock market, even as the S&P had this rally over the last 2 months. That's a good sign. So the setup that we're potentially seeing here, it's looking better and better for gold. We just have to keep an eye on it over the next month or two, because if miners correct with the stock market, you don't want to get faked out, because again, in the big picture, the worse it is for the stock market, the better it is going to be for precious metals. So that's a lot to take in. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys again in the next video.